Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran, and I try to help people using a spiritual perspective. Now, today is December 30th. I'm pretty sure it could be March 2nd. I really don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's December 30th, which means, if you know anything about how calendars work, that means there's one more day of the year, 2023. So, what we all do, I'm sure you've done it, I've definitely done it, is we all love to plan New Year's resolutions. Right? We have like a little list of things we want to write down. We want to lose weight. We want to stop a bad habit. We want to start doing something good. And we basically plan on making January and February, and I guess all of the next year, into some big magical thing where we changed our life. But as I'm here to obviously break to you guys, New Year's resolutions are stupid. They're dumb as shit. They actually never work. All of pretty much everybody's New Year's resolutions fall apart by February 1st. And there's a couple of good reasons for that. Okay. One is that you suck, which seems harsh, but in reality, you do. I suck. I suck more than you, I promise you. But more than that, no, really, it comes down to the idea of change, our perspectives around change. I think it's natural towards the end of a year to want to contemplate and reflect what we've accomplished, what we've missed out on, some mistakes, maybe things that we would like to have, and see what we've done well, what's worked for us, and then see what maybe hasn't worked for us, and to possibly, use the next year as a time to adjust, right? Now, that makes sense. It only makes sense to go to the end of one year and then into the next and plan. But change itself is not something you can plan or control. A caterpillar, for example, does not plan on a New Year's resolution to turn into a butterfly. It just does. So many of us think that change is this idea. I'm going to lose weight. And then suddenly, even though the last 7 months you haven't done any action towards that, suddenly you're a changed person on January 1st, January 2nd. That's not what changes. Change happens on a random Tuesday in March. You're uncomfortable in June. That's when change happens. Change does not happen because you said it's going to happen, right? The act of controlling that change, of trying to make it occur, is also misguided in the sense that change, of course, is what happens later on, right? It's not the initial act of doing something. That's not really change. Change is an internal thing that after a while you might even realize you've changed. After a few months of, I don't know, stop people pleasing, you might notice to yourself, wow, I think I've changed. I've stopped allowing everybody to grope me on the subway. Wow, great. I'm no longer a people pleaser. Change is a sort of slower, less noisy process almost. It seems like a good metaphor or analogy, I suppose, would be sort of like a tree or a bush or something, a plant growing out of the ground. Very quietly, it does it on its own terms. That's change, you know what I mean? Whereas, death or transformation of some kind, catalysts of things, that kind of nature, that's like a tree falling in the woods. It makes a lot of noise, okay? So we have this like misguided perception of change, which we've attributed to these New Year's resolutions, which in of itself is kind of silly anyway, because New Year's is just an arbitrary nonsense day. It doesn't really mean anything. Time doesn't really exist in that kind of sense. So if you were a character in a Gary Paulson novel, and if you're not familiar who that is, then Wikipedia might help you out. But if you were a character lost in the woods and you were there for months or years or whatever, you're on an island or you're surviving on your own, the concept of New Year's doesn't make any sense. Okay, it wouldn't matter. All right, you wouldn't plan a change. Time and the calendar days wouldn't mean anything to you. The only reason we have calendar days, that I can surmise, is that it tells us when the banks are open, right? I mean, it's there to plan things out, but not necessarily there to fulfill us. They're just days on a calendar, right? So if you were lost in the woods, anything that you needed to do to survive, anything that you needed to change to survive, you would have done. You would not plan to change. You would just do it. So even though I think it's a very attractive idea, that I have in my head as well, I'm not like immune to this nonsense, it's a nice idea, right? To want to go into the new year with plans. I have plans. I would love to make more YouTube videos. I would love to, lose 15 pounds. I'd love to stop doing some bad habits, start doing some good things. I have lots of things. I have probably like 24 things I can think of that I could probably do better than I did this past year. But I know from experience that willpower is not enough. It's just not enough to get you through things. The thing that's always worked for me is stop trying to control the change when it does happen to work for me anyway, and to kind of be with your emotions and figure out why you're trying to change, right? It's infinitely more important, in my opinion, to figure out why you want to change, what intentions are going into the change, rather than just doing it for the sake of change. Most of the reasons we want to change that I can see are because of other factors, usually outside of ourself. Things like society, right? Family, friends, relationships, pretty much everything else, okay? But we don't really change for ourselves. So these New Year's resolutions, you want to get a six-pack. Well, that's not really realistic. You want to do X, Y, and Z. And it just could be because of some other factor, and it really has nothing to do with you. So these New Year's resolutions, they don't really work. But you may have heard this tip of sort of psychology tip that I've read one time. When you tell people things, it tends to make it less likely that you complete them. Now, it might vary from individual to individual, but another way of saying that is if you tell everybody that you're going to go on a diet, it gives your brain dopamine. It gives you the same pleasure as if you had actually accomplished the diet in the first place, right? So there's this even psychological effect of how coming up with these New Year's resolutions is kind of insane. Whereas the best thing that you could really do is keep it to yourself, because if you're going to change, you would change anyway.